It's Wednesday, which means we're talking Lord of the Rings. We all know that Lord of the Rings takes place in Middle-earth, but Middle-earth is actually just one continent in the world which is called Arda. And this being a fantasy world, you might be wondering, well, who made the world of Arda? And obviously, J.R.R. Tolkien did, but within the world of Arda, who are the gods that created this world? Well, Tolkien, as a good Catholic, said there's actually only one God, and that would be Eru Ilúvatar. In the time before time, in a place before places, called the Timeless Halls, Eru Ilúvatar lived. And with him were these creatures called the Ainur. And the Ainur are like spiritual beings, think kind of like angels, right? And for an eternity of time, they all lived together in the Timeless Halls. But Ilúvatar wanted to do something different. He wanted there to be something. And so he began to present to the Ainur the great music. And he said to the Ainur, hey, as I sing this music, as we make this music, you can make this music with me. And so the Ainur would come in and they would add their harmonies that fit with it, or they'd play in unison, or one Ainur would sing this part and another Ainur would sing this part. Until there was one of the Ainur who said, this music is all great, but I kind of want to do my own thing. And this guy was named Melkor. And Melkor, he started to make his own music. And his music didn't match the theme that was going on with the great music that Ilúvatar was making. And so he started to do his own themes, and it started to pull some of the other Ainur away from the music that Ilúvatar had made and towards the music that Melkor was making. Well, Ilúvatar said, that's all cool. You can make music, but I'm going to take your music and I'm going to make it part of my music. And so he incorporates these themes that Melkor had been making into the greater music. And Melkor, he's like, no, no, no. I don't want your music. I want my music. And so he makes it even more aggressive, brash, blaring music. And again, Ilúvatar, he goes, okay, listen, you can do that, but I'm the source of music. So anything you're going to do, I'm going to take and I'm going to turn it towards something that I want to make. And so he takes Melkor's second sort of glaring, gross music and he again incorporates it into his. And at this point, Melkor is furious. So he just starts hammering these same loud, brash notes over and over and over until Ilúvatar says, all right, that's enough. And there's just silence in the Timeless Halls. And after that silence, Ilúvatar says, well, my Ainur, we didn't just make music. What we made was the history of this new place, this universe called Ea, which means to be, and specifically this world called Arda. And he shows them this vision of everything that they saw unfolding, and they see a world of mountains and rivers and trees and a history happening there. And then he says, all right, now you guys need to go make it. And they kind of look at each other like, what do you mean? We just saw it. He's like, yeah, that was just a vision of what is going to be made. I want you to go down there and make what you just saw. And so the Ainur go down into this new place, this unformed world called Arda. And Melkor, he goes with. And Melkor says, great, awesome, love this. I'm here for it. What do we want to do, gang? And I guess not really realizing what was going on with the whole music thing, they're like, well, we gotta create stuff. And so their plan is they're all gonna build stuff together. And as they enter this world, there are a group of them. These are the Valar, and these are the most powerful of the spirits that are coming down. Now, initially, Melkor was going to be one of those Valar. And they all had different abilities, right? Things that they were in control of. Well, Melkor, he was basically a spirit of fire, and he dealt with fire and cold, and like heat and the absence of heat. But he very quickly kind of just started doing his own thing to the detriment of all of creation. He basically was the devil of this world. Who were these Valar then? So setting aside Melkor, this guy of fire, right? Who were the other Valar of this world? Well, they were led by Manwë, and Manwë was called the Lord of Winds. He dealt with the air and the winds and clouds, and that was his domain. And he had a wife, Varda, and she was the kindler of stars. The elves particularly loved Varda. They named her Elbereth. We actually see in the books all sorts of hymns and praises to Elbereth, the kindler of the stars. The next Vala, and Vala is the singular for the plural Valar, was Olmo, and he was the lord of the waters. He created the oceans and dwelt in the oceans, and he kind of lived by himself there. And it was said that anywhere that water ran in all of Arda, Olmo was there. The next Vala was Aule, and he was the great craftsman. He eventually actually created the original dwarves. And his wife was Yavanna. Yavanna was like the queen of the earth. So Varda was the queen of the stars. She was the queen of the earth, and all living things she cared for. She created trees and plants and animals, birds, things like that. She was the lover of all living things. The next Vala was Orome. He was the great hunter, and he had this horse that he would hunt the beasts of Melkor, because Melkor, being a bad dude, would take things that like Yavanna made and corrupt them into evil beasts. And so Orome's job was he would go through the forests of the world hunting these beasts. And his wife was Vanna, the ever young is what they called her, and she made flowers blossom. Anywhere she went, flowers would blossom and birds would sing. The next Vala was Mandos, or his original name was Nemo, but he became known as Mandos, which is where he lived, the halls of Mandos. Mandos was called the doomsman of the Valar, and he would give prophecies. He like remembered the music that they had heard in the timeless halls better than anyone else. And so he would tell them, hey, these things are going to happen. This is what I remember from the music. He was the doomsman of the Valar, and he was also the keeper of the dead. His wife was Vaire, and she was called the Weaver. Vaire was like the historian. She watched everything that happened in Middle-earth. She wove these tapestries that filled the halls of Mandos, so that as history went on, more and more of it would be filled with the history of the world. So she was basically like the archivist for everything in the world of Arda. Now Mandos, or Nemo, had a brother named Ermo, who was known by where he lived, which is Lorien, the Garden of Lorien. Lorien was the lord of dreams and visions. That was his whole deal. And he was married to Este, and Este, she was the Vala in charge of like rest and healing. And so together they would come to Este for rest, and then while they were resting, Lorien would give them dreams and visions. The next Vala was actually the last Vala to arrive. His name was Tulkas. And Tulkas, he basically watched from the Timeless Halls everything that was going on. And he saw, as, Aule would try to build a mountain, Melkor would tear it down. And as Olmo would try to make a river, Melkor would use his fire to dry it up. And Tulkas got annoyed by this, and he came for one reason and one reason only, and it was to beat up Melkor. And so he was this like happy warrior who came in, and he was like known for his wrestling, and he would like go and he ended up like wrestling Melkor and basically beating him into submission. Tolkien's whole deal was he was like, I want to fight Melkor. That's all he did. He added nothing creatively. He just liked to beat up bad guys. And Tulkas, he took for his wife, the Vala Nessa. She was known as like the great dancer, and she was so fast. And whenever she ran, she would outrun the deer through the woods, right? So those two got married. It was a lovely ceremony that ended up actually being a distraction and allowed Melkor to come back and destroy a lot of the world. And then the last of the Valar, her name is Nienna. And Nienna, her whole deal is she cries. She has pity for the hurts of the world, and she mourns for the hurts of the world. And I think I saved her for last because I think she's the coolest one. That there's a dedicated Vala who their whole thing is just to mourn the hurts that have happened. But with that pity, she also taught wisdom, which is like a common theme throughout all of Lord of the Rings, all of Tolkien's writings, is bad things happen, and it's bad that they happen, and you should mourn that they happen, but you can still learn wisdom from what happened. And so those are all of the quote-unquote gods of the world, with Iluvatar as the main god who kind of gave them this world of Arda to deal with. And hey, if you like learning about the Valar and you want to hear more about them or the Maiar, you should check out my podcast, the Lord of the Rings AMA podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.